Hello and welcome to another episode of the Smaulgld Subscribers Sound Off. Today I have with me a returning guest, Marc Battaglia. Some of you may know Marc has been on the show before. He is the author or the person who originated the concept of taking the second red pill and naming Smaulgld the red pill for the red pill. We're going to talk about that concept, and also you may know or may not know, but Marc is also the author of the composer of all of the Smaulgld original intro music, and that song we just heard is entitled Silver Pimp. Marc, how you doing today?
Good. What's up, brother?
All right. Well, Marc, I know you got a few things to talk about today, but briefly, for some of our viewers who are being introduced to you for the first time, could you just explain your concept, and I think it ties into some of the things you want to talk about today, the concept of why one must take the second red pill, and explain what the first red pill is in general. And we'll just get a shorter version of what we discussed in great detail on our first conversation we had over a year and a half ago.
Sure. Yeah, well, basically it came about, through a lot of people, the gold and silver pumpers. You buy into the narrative and the first red pill is just, okay, wow, things are really messed up, the debt, all the problems in the world, and then you kind of sink into that narrative. And once you go down that hole, you start listening to the people saying the dollar's going to collapse and you need to buy gold and you need to have food and whatnot. And then the second red pill, just to be brief, is once you realize, okay, things are really bad and things are messed up, but it's not as bad or as dire or as imminent as the narrative would have told you. And that's the second red pill, is to, after you get woke, for lack of a better word, then you have to take another pill just to realize, okay, let me step back and objectively look at this. And I came through it to that realization just through the gold price and the silver price just not doing anything, and the dollar still soaring, and nothing they predicted for year in year out made me step back. And your channel definitely helped, because you're one of the few level-headed people on the internet talking about this stuff. So you just have to take the second red pill to understand that the first pill that got you woke, maybe the dose was too high,
Right.
And you needed to take it down a bit. So you take the second red pill and then you step back and say, okay, investing in the stock market isn't bad. It's not going to collapse tomorrow. It might not collapse for 10, 20 years, whatever. So it's just about, reassessing what you thought when you got woke isn't really, exactly true 100%.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening is you binge drink this stuff to the point where you believe it and you refuse to see, or you just can't see, any other point of view because you've become so enamored with a certain narrative. And I guess that is the danger. And that's when I heard you use that word, take the second red pill, to me it meant go as deep into the reasons why a narrative that you've now adopted may not be true. I'm not saying you have to reject out of hand everything that you've just spent the last 6 months of your life learning about, but if what you've learned hasn't turned out, or the results of basically what you learned haven't turned into something such as higher gold, silver prices, I think either you have to say to yourself, that's complete nonsense, or you have to look and say, why hasn't that happened? And I think when you do that, that's the process of taking the second red pill. And it's not as much fun because there's not as many people that believe all that stuff. There's a lot of people get annoyed when you challenge something that they spend 6 months of their lives plowing through YouTube videos, learning about dollar collapse and end of the petrodollar and silver set to skyrocket and gold is money, period. And when you find out that there's people that don't believe that, I think you get annoyed. And I think you once told me when you first spoke to me that you heard me on, what was it, X22?
Yes.
And you weren't too happy with me, were you?
No, I thought you were a shill, that typical mentality. Like, it's like, well, no, I'm woke. I listen to Bill Holter and Mike Baloney and Dim Rickards and who's this guy, but you're right and they're wrong. But when I first heard you, you were challenging what I thought, and I spent time learning. And it's not just finances. I mean, you have to take the second red pill, especially with the way social media and the internet is, with everything.
Yes.
Ebola was going to kill everyone 5 years ago. Okay, that was a non-story. You could go down the list. Every time it snows, it's the worst snowstorm ever to come. It just happened in New Jersey. I mean, the governor called us, you couldn't be on the roads after noon. We got 4 inches of snow, the whole state.
Yeah.
So, there's this, the second red pill applies to more than just economics. It's just, everything is so hyped because of the internet and social media that you just have to step back and say, okay, let me just objectively look at this rather than just buying into, what might be fun or interesting to you because you're in that mindset.
Right. So critical thinking is important. And I think people substitute watching a lot of YouTube videos, and they call that critical thinking. They just indoctrinate themselves with a point of view, and they never step back and try to understand whether what they're saying is incorrect or not. Now, you have another theory that you think that all this happens because there has been an inundation of new technologies that makes this type of dissemination of narratives even more prevalent and makes people even more susceptible to them. Can you explain that concept?
Yeah, like we were talking about, before, in the pre-interview, when you think about like the cell phone and the internet and Facebook and eBay and YouTube, you go down the list of everything that people have on their phones. If you go back 15 years, it didn't exist. I mean, the iPhone came out in 2006, I believe. So it's such it became such an integral part of everyone's lives. And not only that, the global economy cannot function without the internet and cell phones anymore. And it happened within the span of 10 to 15 years. When you look at old technologies, like the horse to the car, it took a lot longer. Electricity. I mean, houses were still running on lamps. It's not like within 10 years, every house in the country or in the world had electricity. But with social media and more, it's really real. Smartphones was the real, kicker, because the internet, was a little older and it was a little more archaic. It's just become such a part of everyone's lives. And, I always talk to my friends, like, do you even remember how we used to get to restaurants before we had cell phones or how you booked a trip? I mean, it's like you're thinking 75 years ago, but it was only 15 years ago where you had to do things differently. So I think because it came on so quick and became such a powerful part of people's lives that, there's underlying problems with it. And I think we're seeing that with news and how things become so divided and divisive, the Covington story or Trump or, you could name all the stories. It just feeds into that, just intrinsically what social media is. It's a divisive thing by nature.
Well, doesn't it also mean that because of the proliferation of the technologies that you never turn it off? I mean, you used to have to watch television. You got your dose of it. Then you left and you went about your life, and maybe you didn't come back and watch television till the evening, or maybe you didn't watch it in the evening. Maybe you only watched it in the morning or only watched it in the evening. But today, the potential to be, quote, informed is 24/7. People checking their social media where they receive most of their news. And is that a good thing, Mark?
I don't think so. I mean, I think on paper, it did liberate a lot of people in terms of getting information out there that the gatekeepers used to have. So you can't say no, it's just a terrible thing, but there's definitely downsides because everyone now has their own little narrative in their phone. So if you're a pro gold person, everything that comes through your feed because you subscribe to it is going to reaffirm what you want to think rather than challenge you to think something else. And someone who's on the left, all their news and all their feeds is going to be left leaning, and someone who's on the right, it's all going to be right leaning. So there is no. That's where the division comes from. I mean, people blame Trump or they just blame the world is so divisive. It's divisive because no one has a collective discussion anymore. If you're at the water cooler and you got a Republican and you got a Democrat and they're talking about the Covington story, they both have different stories coming to them through their phone. It's not like they both read the same story in the newspaper and they're discussing the merits of that story. They each have their own take on it, and that's where the divisiveness comes in about everything. Is the dress white or blue?
Right. So everyone has their own. They select what they want to see, and that's a result of the technology which didn't exist before. So in the old days, you had CBS, NBC, and everybody saw the same news and had at least a common point from which to speak of, because that was, quote, the news, and you didn't have an option to see a steady diet of something else because you only turned the TV on for the news for a particular half hour or an hour. But now what you have is the ability, as you're saying, you can get fed to you Breitbart or The Atlantic, whatever you choose, and only read that. However, what I see happening too, though, Mark, is, and I want your comment on it, is that the social media platforms, however, do interfere into people's own bubbles. So, for example, if you're on the right and you don't want to see certain stories from the left, you're going to see them anyway. And they end up becoming the narrative. So, for example, the Covington story is a classic one because that story would not have been one of the things you choose to receive because it's two kids standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Native American goes up to them banging a drum. You've got black Israelites chanting out what they say. That's generally not of interest to many people. But yet that's a story that even though you may have chosen, it would not have been on your preferences, that type of story may not have interested you. It got forced into your feed, though, and it became what everyone was talking about. And the only reason it became that was because the social media platforms and the legacy media platforms pushed that story. So do you think you can hide from these types of stories? And is it a good thing? Because if you're only looking at what you want to look at, you're viewing that as a downside, that there's not this collective people are looking at the same thing. But is it good for the media to select what everyone's going to look at, like this Covington kid story?
Well, no, and it's beyond that. I mean, obviously the social media has biases, and they push these stories through hashtags and just they can shape the narrative. But it's more than that. Even if you're following a Breitbart or whatever, all of these news organizations and bloggers or whatever you want to call them, they still do it too. They'll repost something from the left just to get you enraged, or and vice versa. So not only is the social media pushing the narrative they want, but everyone else is festering it, whether they know it or not. They'll grab a tweet of someone that might be something that someone on the right finds offensive, and they'll retweet it. It's like, well, I never would have seen that tweet. I never would have known if you didn't retweet it. So as the platforms might push the narrative, I think all of the sub people, they help it along by retweeting and making it even a bigger story than it is.
Well, isn't that your concept of the echo chamber, because of technology, is even bigger now? And again, a story like this Covington Kids thing becomes a worldwide story where the president is tweeting about it. And here it is, a 15-year-old kid stood in front of somebody. And in reality, it's a non-story, except that it's become a story. Well, how long? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it becomes a story because people get heated about it. Is the dress white or is it blue? So people have their opinions and they form their opinions based on who they follow. So,
but is there something that is worth having an opinion on, though?
No, it's a non-story. Like you're saying, it doesn't affect anyone's lives whatsoever. But it's not even a national story. This is a worldwide story.
Well, it actually affects the kids' lives, but it didn't affect anyone else there. I mean, the guy who was pounding on the drum, he's not traumatized or anything. He got to do what he wanted to do. It's the kids that are feeling the brunt of it, and they weren't looking for that, I don't think.
No, and and it's even past. We're talking about stories that everyone talks about, but it's kind of even past that. Even if you look at lock her up. And, it's Mueller time. So those aren't stories that are out every day like this Covington story. But depending on what you listen to, there's people like the QAnon crowd who are buying into this. They're going to just lock everyone up. And And the same on the left. You got the people who are like, oh, Mueller's going to take down the entire Trump family. They're going to be behind bars, you know, without any really thought of actual reality. You know, so yeah, the QAnon saying they're going to lock her up. I mean, there's no way Hillary Clinton's going to jail. It's just never going to happen. I mean, people need to understand that and say, okay, is it an injustice? Probably.
And there's probably, and on the flip side, it's almost just as unlikely that Trump actually gets removed from office.
Yeah, no, yeah, totally. You know, I retweeted an exchange I saw of these people who, you know, when this fake Trump with his lawyer saying that he did an impeachable offense, you know, talking about how, oh, well, Trump's going to go to jail, then Pence is going to get removed, then Pelosi's going to get put in the speaker, and she's going to name Hillary Clinton vice president. And these people, like on a stream of 100 people, were like, yeah, I can't wait. Oh, good, you know, what a great day. It's like, you know, and again, same thing on the right. I mean, you know, I remember when the election was going on, when Comey came out and said they're going to look at, you know, Hillary's thing, and everyone's like, oh, she's going to jail. It's like, no, she's not.
They still believe that.
She's not going to jail. She's not going to jail. You know.
Well, so, and that's because you have nobody's reporting objectively the stories because, for example, the BuzzFeed thing. If true, yeah, of course. If someone robbed a bank, then yes, they'd be guilty of bank robbery. But if you don't have any supporting detail other than someone says this might have happened, they report on it. And the reason they do that is they want people, that's what people want to believe. There's a certain group of people that want to believe Trump's going down, and then there's another group of people that want to believe that the deep state is going down, and no one's reporting on even likelihood. They're just giving people what they want to hear.
Well, exactly, because, you know, as we were talking about, if you hit someone with just arbitrary facts that are middle of the road, you alienate 100% of the people because the people, yeah,
even if those are the facts.
Yeah. The facts don't matter. They don't matter. You know, we've seen that with the gold community. We've seen that in politics. Yeah, it just doesn't matter. All that matters is what you want to believe. And if someone's telling you something that's slightly off of that, you kind of reject them. Like I first did when I heard you on X22. I was like, this guy's not saying the same thing that all these other people are saying. Therefore, he's an idiot. You know, so
he's got an agenda. When really, in reality, is trying to be objective is an agenda, but it's not. I think it's better than making up stories to feed to people so that they hear what they want to hear.
Yeah. You know, and I go by the rule that, you know, the vast majority of people are kind of idiots. You know, not like real idiots, but just idiots in the sense that they don't think deeply enough to see things for what they are. And that, yeah, like we said, that's probably the reason why, you know, your content is amazing, but your viewership compared to like a SGT report is minuscule. But that guy just peddles one narrative and half of it's BS. And I didn't curse. I'm doing good.
That's a first.
Yeah, that's a first.
You got to use initials.
Yes. So yeah, you know, there's not a big market for honesty and truth. You know, and that's hyped by the social media.
Yeah, I think it comes down to peddling emotions. And it could be subtle or it could be in your face. There are people that want to be outraged. So all you have to do is put in front of them, and they're trigger points, and they're on both sides, left and right. There's certain things that are going to trigger certain people. And the media or the YouTube channels, they know, like, for example, I know one of the ways to get a lot of viewers is to go on and talk about JP Morgan because they've been demonized so much. So if you write JP Morgan's going down, you're going to get a lot of viewers. They want to hear that Jamie Dimon, they're looking to hear things that confirm why they're outraged. Banksters, Rothschilds, they want to hear about that stuff, and the Fed. And then on the left, you have the same thing. You want to hear about why Trump's going down, impeachment. So they're not really looking to hear what's going on. They're looking to hear what might happen based on what they want to happen. So it's cheerleading. It's same with gold, silver set to sky. Again, if I put up a headline, silver set to skyrocket in 2019, far more people are going to visit that than if I just say outlook for silver within a, you know, we expect it to trade within a tight range. No one's going to want to read that at all.
Yeah, no. You're not tapping into that emotion. Yeah, and this is back to what we were talking about, like, you know, if you go back, 20 years, let's say, or I'm not, I'm just guessing, but journalists used to be, a dignified field, to where if you were a journalist, you sought the truth. They were the fourth estate, right? They were there by, as the Constitution has framed them, as to the watchdog, really.
Right.
And that's gone. Journalism is gone. It's almost like I make the analogy to music. I mean, real musicians, they're not looked upon favorably anymore, because music isn't made for the most part with real musicians. So journalism isn't made with real journalists anymore. It's these armchair journalists who sit in Starbucks and they'll Google a story, and then they'll kind of paraphrase it, and then they'll add a bunch of tweets that they pulled off of Twitter, and boom, I'm a journalist. Look, there's my story. So
that's what happened in Covington. Someone tweeted. Yeah. What happened was somebody tweeted the pictures of the happenings in front of the Capitol, and they thought, oh, that looks bad. That probably piss off a lot of people. So what we see here is these kids bothering this guy, and that'll get people annoyed. So they didn't research it. They didn't do the journalism, who, what, where, why, and how, and look for the context. They just said, we can get this story out first and create the outrage and get the most visits.
Yeah, because first matters. That's all. Truth doesn't matter. First matters. In the field of new journalism.
Well, it wouldn't have been a story at all if they looked at it.
No, of course not.
They would have said, "Oh, okay," because the Black Israelites have been saying whatever they were saying at the place for decades. I mean, they're on street corners in D.C. and New York. So the fact that they were saying that is no big deal. The fact that a guy had a drum and went in to break up the two groups, that's not a story. And the fact that the kid stood there as opposed to stepping aside or not smiling, it's not important, but they made it a story.
Well, and not only they made it, but it goes back to what we were saying. So if you're on the left, you already think anyone in a MAGA hat who's white is bad, right? So you already have a negative. So all you needed with it was this little optic of the kids smirking and the kids behind, doing whatever, and that just fueled you into a rage, right? So,
and even if you find out afterwards, well, he must have done something wrong because he's wearing that hat.
Yeah. Well, obviously that doesn't excuse it, because he's obviously a bigot and a racist, and his parents are bigots because he's wearing a Trump hat. So, it's back to if there was real journalists and real journalism, it never would have been a story, like you said. If you really look at it, what it is two people practicing their First Amendment right peacefully. The guy banging the drum and the kid standing there staring him down. I mean, that's the definition of a peaceful protest.
Right.
They're not doing anything. They're not offending each other.
Nope.
But you have the left who got whipped into a frenzy because, like I said, they're already hated everyone, and it goes the same for the right. I mean,
well, they got into a frenzy too. There's the same thing.
Yeah. I mean,
both sides were outraged over something that wasn't outrageous.
Yes, exactly. And in fairness, I think the right was more outraged of the way the left handled it. I mean, you're talking about doxing kids, and that's you really crossed the whole media apparatus really crossed the line on this with allowing that all to go down. So, if we're going to be objective, I mean,
I agree. Oh no, for sure. But the point is that they still, and I guess you have to. What happens is they still control the narrative by making that a story and forcing you to respond to it, because if what you see is injustice because of the way they frame the story, you have to respond. But now they've got you because you're forced to respond.
Yes.
And I think that's the danger, going back to your original thought of the collective news, is sometimes the collective news is a selected narrative. And that's not necessarily a good thing. You might be better off being in your own bubble and only seeing what you want to see than being force-fed this kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about when the journalists were the fourth estate, when there was some integrity in the field.
I bet you, I mean, I don't want to be bashing nostalgia, but it's possible they never were.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, things are always rosier when you look back.
We may think that they were all real journalists, but they were probably propagandists back then too.
Yeah, but I think the medium and the delivery forced them to at least go out and get the story and get it printed and run it past the editor. You know what I'm saying?
Let me ask you a question then. Do you think, let's say, take social media away. Let's go back. We're in 1982. There's no internet. And this little event happened, and a reporter for the Washington Post was there. Do you think they would have written a story, amplified the story, taken pictures, gone through the trouble of putting on the evening news?
No. And even if they had an agenda and they wanted to make this into a story, it would be so much work. Whereas today, that's back to that echo chamber. All you need to do is put it out once, and then all of a sudden, 1 million people have retweeted it. So
it's easier to create a story, and even a viral story, but it's just as easy to debunk it as well in today's world because of the video.
But then it's back to what we were saying. If your little bubble doesn't want to hear the debunking, you just write it off. If you're into gold and silver and you show them proof that it's the worst performing asset, you just brush it off. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, you'll see. One day. Whatever. So it's easy just to write it off. The
you'll see is the best for anyone who believes fervently in a narrative. It's always it's coming. It could be 10 years, 20 years. Everything is coming. You're going to die soon. I predict that. It's coming.
And we always laugh about how the geniuses on Twitter, the financial geniuses, how if the market turns down 2%, they're all taking victory laps. Like, you see, it's going. It's like, okay, it's up 300%. Now it's down 2%, and you're taking a victory lap. Like, you see, I told you it was a scam.
So where do you see all this going, Mark, in the remaining minutes that we have on this interview? You mentioned in the pre-interview, in the last 10 years, things have become mainstream technologies that didn't even exist that have helped proliferate these narratives: iPhone, YouTube, iTunes, Wi-Fi, Netflix, and so on. Do you see any emerging technologies right now that'll either exacerbate this problem or change how we consume media, how we think about the world?
Well, I think I'm not a Luddite or anything. Technology is a wonderful thing. It definitely makes a lot of people's lives easier and makes things, a lot of things better. But I think, just like we used to look at the ads for the doctors saying, well, I recommend Marlboro because it helps you digest better than Pall Malls or whatever. And you laugh like, wow, those people in the 50s, they didn't know what the hell they were doing. Or when they were spraying DDT on people on the beach, like, oh, this will help people with the mosquitoes. I think in time they're going to look back and say, you people just took these smartphones and you gave them to your 1-year-old kids at dinner, and everyone buried their face in their phone. I think there's going to be an awakening. I think everyone will admit that the phones are addictive. We're all addicted to them on some level, some worse than others. I think in time people will just realize that. At least it's my hope.
Well, what's going to break? But why do you hope that? What's going to break that addiction?
I think it's just as bad as it's getting. You know what I mean? Because when you go on Twitter and like this Covington thing, whatever side you're on, you put your phone down and you're agita, right? You're upset. Whether you're on the right or the left, you put it down. You're like, now I'm pissed off. I think eventually people are just going to get sick of being upset. Being pissed off. I don't know.
I think that's addictive. A lot of people, they wake up in the morning looking for reasons to be pissed off, no matter what side you're on. They're looking for the latest outrage.
Well, like I said, it might be more my wish than any basis of theory, but.
But hold on. But if you want something, and we talked about this in many contexts, when there is a market need, if people actually don't want to be pissed off, if people actually want a different life, usually it's either up to the person or the market to give them that, or the government. Somebody somehow is going to fill that need. Do you think that people, other than yourself, are really at a point where they've had enough?
I think so, because I've been at family functions and even talking to a lot of the kids that come to the studio and stuff. They're all aware of the problem. Whether they're gonna do anything about it on their own personal level, there is an awareness. There's definitely an awareness that social media isn't great. It's antisocial. I think the majority of people actually are starting to realize that. And all of how many big tech people have come out and give TED Talks even on how this technology is ruining the fabric of society. You know, it really is on a lot of levels. So
yeah, but TED Talks are then received on social media, on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
and that's how people consume them.
Of course, you know, it's a loop. But I do think there is an awareness. You know, I think a lot more parents are limiting their kids' use on the cell phone, especially now as compared to maybe, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I know we do with my daughter, you know, that she's got, a certain amount of time, and then, give us the phone, it's gone. So, yeah, I mean, maybe that's just wishful thinking, but from just my little circle of people I've talked to, there's definitely awareness of that. There is an issue that needs to be addressed. How it gets addressed, whether it's through free market or just people making choices. It's almost kind of like the food. I mean, people are starting to realize that, okay, you need to eat not as much processed or organic if you can afford it, or, just I think people are starting to make the connection that, eating a hungry man dinner 7 nights a week isn't in your best interest long term. So,
but a lot of these awakenings do come about as a result of dissemination of information, which is enhanced through cell phones and other technology. So it's kind of a catch-22, because how do you continue to get the benefits of people becoming aware of things that will help their life while realizing that the source that they're getting that information from is also something that's harming their life?
Yeah, no, it's a conundrum, and
I want you to solve it on this podcast.
yeah. I think politics is the most, what's the word? Like the most cutting of all of the things, whatever you're into, if you're into health or music or whatever, you could get on the internet and get a wealth of information about it. I think that just the politics and the news cycle is what's really the divisive part. The internet is great if the internet is great for things that are factual, that you want to learn those facts about. I'm sure you're like a lot of people, when you're talking and something comes up that you don't know, you look it up. And then if it's a factual thing, like, how many bones are in the body, the internet is amazing to get that information. Right. Okay, here, I think where it becomes a problem is when you're into anything that is objective or subjective. Then you can't, then you get into debates and arguments, and there is no real truth.
Well, what's happening, I just realized they are trying to solve that problem on the left by saying, okay, we have a problem with people consuming too much fake news, so what we're going to do is we're going to create apps and algorithms to make sure that they don't see this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the best solution, but that's akin to what you're saying. Is I think it's more along the lines that maybe they create something where people decide, or an app, you see what you want to see, but there's a problem in that too, because then if you're a gold or silver pumper, you're only going to want to see stories about gold set to skyrocket, silver set to skyrocket, and similarly, you're going to select to see only what you want to see with respect to your politics or your music taste. So it's hard to, when there's so much out there, to try to apply a filter to it and have it be 100% good. Because when you apply a filter, by definition, you're eliminating other stuff, which might give you a different point of view, which might be healthy. So I don't know how you solve it. But I think maybe the real issue is you don't try to solve it.
Everyone has to do their own unto themselves. Just like you create your own little bubble, you just kind of wean yourself off it a little bit. Or, I remember I was on Facebook, and I got off during the Boston bombing because I thought the story was a little fishy, but the thing I really didn't like was the military presence and them going house to house and seeing pictures of people coming out with their kids with guns drawn on them. To me, that was like, this isn't America. But a majority of people on Facebook were like, this is good, they got to get those people or whatever. And I got so pissed off at the whole thing. I said, I'm deleting Facebook. And Lewis, it was the best thing I ever did. Like, I've never looked back. I mean, from that day on, my life got so much better.
Yeah, but now you're on Twitter getting pissed off.
Yeah. And there's going to be, trust me, there's going to be a day where Marva Sarcastic just disappears. Yeah, that's definitely, definitely going to happen because, me personally, something's going to happen, that I'm just going to be like, what is this doing for my life? It's not really helping at all. So,
and that is the key to addiction, because addictions generally, and by definition, it got a negative connotation, or not helping your life. The question is, how do you break it? It's just it's like alcohol. Some people say, "Oh, a couple of drinks are good for you." All right, but but it's a quart of whiskey a night isn't good for you.
Yeah.
And the question is, how do you wean yourself off? Do you go cold turkey, or do you learn how to use alcohol and social media responsibly? And I don't think people have even thought of it. At least with alcohol and drugs and other issues with addiction, people have actually recognized that they are issues. I think people don't view, very few people view internet addiction or political addiction. I mean, unless it's your job to be commenting on stuff all day long, I'm not sure that's healthy.
No, and and the interactive social medias are one thing, like the Facebooks, and Twitter is the worst. Obviously, that's just a a world unto itself. But the ones like I'm on none of them except Twitter. So, but Instagram, people just mindlessly, my brother-in-law, Christmas, he's just sitting there mindlessly scrolling through I mean, you don't even interact with him. You might hit a like or something. But that's a problem unto itself. That might not get you mad or anything, but you're just mindlessly looking at these little clips of videos of people doing stuff. I don't know. Like I said, it's my wish that it comes full circle and people just realize like there's better ways to spend time than doing that for hours on end. Especially, we've all been to restaurants where there's a family, whether it's the mom or dad staring into space and the rest of the family's got their heads buried in the phone at dinner. It's like, wow, yeah. Great night out, huh? Everybody having a good time.
You're better off sending each of the kids to their room and sending for takeout, and having them eat by themselves if you're going to do that. All right, before we close out, let's switch over to, because this is a precious metals, cryptocurrency channel, as well as economics, and once in a while we get into what's going on in the world. What is your view now on just the state of those markets, the precious metals markets and the cryptocurrency markets?
Well, the precious metals markets, I've done a 180 on my view of them. I accumulated way too many when I was believing all the pumpers. But you're the one who really pointed it out, that it's insurance, and that's it. It's a hedge and insurance. So would you spend $20,000 a month on insurance? No, you buy the insurance that you think you'll need in case something happens.
And also don't hope that your house burns down.
Exactly. Which I'll admit that when I was in the fervor, you're like, yeah, when the dollar collapses, I'm going to be rich. But like you pointed out, it's like, okay, you could go to Venezuela and be rich, but okay, what kind of life are you going to have there? There's no toilet paper, whether you're rich or not, there's no toilet paper. Right. So, so I've done a 180 on the views of the metals. I mean, I still like them for what they are, but I don't worship them. And honestly, I mean, I'm waiting for any type of pop to get out of my position. I'll hold a little bit for insurance, but, I accumulated, way too much as far as I'm concerned, because I bought into the hype and the pumper story. As far as the cryptocurrencies, I was kind of like you. I thought they were useless. I didn't see any value in them, but then I bought some. They had their run up. I'm very proud that I bought 2 motorcycles on my Bitcoin profits when they kind of peaked. I didn't sell the top, but I sold close to it. Very proud. But I held the rest of them as it went down. But then, you really started pointing out that, Bakkt and all these companies in Wall Street are really getting into this space, and they don't do things, on a whim, or they don't do things unless they think there's a profit there. So, I think the cryptocurrencies in general, I think there's going to be a huge future for them, just based on, I got under the mentality of trying to fight the Fed and end the Fed. You can't fight the Fed. So if you would have just done what they told you from 1980 to today, you'd be rich. You know what I'm saying? If you would, when they're pumping the market, you go into the market. When they're pumping housing, you go into housing. And I think you're right. I think they're setting up to pump the cryptos. So I think you should dabble in them, because, not financial advice, as everyone likes to say, but it seems to me through you, from your analysis and your research, that Wall Street is gearing up to do something with them. I don't know what it is, but I don't think they're putting in billions of dollars just to have it go away and not get SEC approval and not become an asset class. So, yeah, I've done a 180 on gold and cryptos, just to the flip side of each of them.
Yeah, that's part of the second red pill, because I think what happens is you dig your heels in on the narrative that you know, and then that is all you need to know, and you don't want to hear anything else because it's in a sense you've already made up your mind. The problem with making up your mind about markets is foolish, because markets are fluid. It's the old Heraclitus, you can't step in the same river twice. Other than saying the river is wet and that is all I need to know. Yeah, fine. You know the river is wet, but you don't know really the direction the river is going to flow, and you're going to have to watch the river and adjust accordingly. You can't just assume. It's just like when you're navigating on the ocean. Not that I'm a navigator, but you can't just say this is how I'm going to go and that's it and everything.
No, and back to what we were talking about like Twitter. Like, one of the things that kept me from buying Bitcoin was I was constantly getting in arguments. If you're listening, Goyer, you know, and because I had my position, like you said, I was adverse to it because I was constantly arguing with the Bitcoin maximalists. When in reality, if I would have just stepped back and said, okay, well,
you do your own research, yes.
Yeah, I was just kind of pissed off at them that I didn't really buy into it. And finally, when I got the second red pill, I was like, okay, let me look into this a little more. I mean, on a side, unrelated note, you know how you make the Jackson Pollock references about, his paintings and stuff. I got to admit, I saw one. I always thought his paintings were shit, but if you see one in real life, they're actually pretty cool.
Oh, sure. Just for our listeners, the Jackson Pollock analogy is when people decide from their own personal prejudices that something like Bitcoin or gold or Jackson Pollock paintings are worthless, and therefore they determine that no one should be interested in them, and therefore they conclude that they're worthless and ignore totally that there actually is a multi-million-dollar market for Jackson Pollock paintings, irrespective of the fact that you and all your buddies, whether they're on Twitter in real life or in Facebook, think that his paintings are no good. It doesn't matter what you think. There are people that appreciate his painting. So I always say, if someone were to give me a Jackson Pollock painting, I would take it. I wouldn't say this is no good. Same when people say the dollar is worthless. It is toilet paper. Send it my way.
Yeah.
I'll find use for it and won't have anything to do with the bathroom.
Well, and that's that red pill. I mean, once you take that second red pill about the dollar, you almost laugh at yourself. If you were like, an anti-dollar person and bought that narrative like the dollar is toilet paper and, it's going to collapse. Once you get out of that, you look back and say, what an idiot. I mean, the whole world runs on the dollar. Like, the whole world.
You don't even have to know the whole world. You're day to day, even if you disbelieve in the dollar, you're living every day on dollars. You're paying your rent. You're buying your groceries in dollars. You're even sending money to your favorite silver pumper in dollars.
In dollars, yeah.
And then you're looking at the price of silver in dollars.
Yeah, and hoping that it goes up in dollars.
In dollars.
So you can sell your silver and get some dollars and buy some stuff with it. So but yeah, you get brainwashed by the balonies of the world, and you think that the dollar is worthless. It's like, no, it's not worthless. I mean, like I said, that every country in the world, not every, but the majority of countries would have to collectively say, we're not using the dollar anymore, and that's not going to happen. It's
that would harm them more than it would harm the United States.
Yeah, exactly. What are they going to use? What are other countries going to take? Their currency, the yuan? No, it's not going to happen.
Gold, silver.
Yeah, they're going to take gold. They're going to send shipments of gold back and forth.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Mark, it's always a pleasure talking to you. We'll have you on again soon. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I want to thank you for all the music that you've created specifically for the Smaulgld podcast. So thank you very much, Mark. And Mark, where can people reach you if they're interested in getting your unique brand of take on current events?
Well, I mean, I'm on Twitter. That's it. I just go there and sh post. Really, that's the m.sarcastic is on Twitter. But I'm not really pushing anything. And it's funny you mentioned the music. I remember when I first started listening to your content and liked you, and you used to have that. You used to like play piano or something on it.
I had my own rudimentary compositions that I used to introduce the show.
And I remember thinking, like, that is so awful, but his content is so good. And then somehow you followed me on Twitter, and I DM'd him like, dude, I'll do some music for you because your show is great, but your intro needs some serious help.
Definitely up the game at the intro. I think some people would listen to. I think I was playing something from Tchaikovsky. I think I was playing the Nutcracker Suite or something.
Yeah, and I think you could like hear the keys and stuff. It was a train wreck.
Yeah, and I had the guitar, I had a few riffs on there. Nothing very good. I think a lot of people never got to the content. They listened to like 10 seconds of me fiddling around on the guitar, and they got off.
Shame.
So. Some people actually, you know, Mark, they get on, and they're like, is Lewis gonna play Bitcoin, the Dow 2000, 20,000 tonight, or is he going to play? You know, they try to figure out what song I'm going to play. Litecoin Charlie. So it is a part of the show now, and I thank you for that. All right, Mark, we will talk to you soon. Thank you very much indeed.
You got it. Take care.